Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, we're going to run through some things. I don't pretend to be the master of all of these subjects. I have my master's. I did research, a couple different research projects. And so I know what it takes to get through the IRB process. I know what it takes to do all of the legwork that you're going to do this summer and then actually conduct the study, which once you get all the legwork done this summer, the actually conducting it is the fun part, right? That's the stuff that really gets you going. But how many people are here are my people who have done research before or are comfortable with research, right? How many of my people are here who have never done research and this is like their first real, right? So I think it's important, no matter who's in here, to go back to basics, to review. That way, all your bases are covered when you're starting to do your research this summer and in the fall. Okay. For those of you that don't know, we are the McNair Scholars Program. Thank you for those of us that have joined us today. We got really hot and burnt yesterday. It was awesome, scared, a little bit terrified, but we did it. So today we're going to be going over some research stuff. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a grad school panel, but McNair Scholars Program is all about Dr. McNair, and that's kind of what I try to tell each of you during your interview process, is to keep him in mind when we're doing everything, because it's his legacy that we are continuing on, right? Okay, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Great. Starting off with ethics today, okay? First thing you need to know about ethics is honesty. Whenever you're doing a study, it applies to everything that you're doing in terms of whether you're doing an IRB study with human subjects, whether you're doing chemistry or physics or different things like that. You're not using human subjects, but that honesty is reporting your data correctly, doing your methods and procedures ethically, publication status and things like that. Don't falsify, fabricate data. Don't lie during your literature review and try and make stuff up. Right? That is very unethical. That's going to be caught, and then your reputation is tarnished. Especially those of you in here who are wanting to be professors one day, right? Okay. Objectivity. Try to avoid bias whenever you're doing your experimental design process, data analysis, data interpretation. Just because you had a research question in mind, and just because you want something to happen, you want these certain results, don't try and skew your data to try and prove yourself right. That's how people get in trouble in the scientific world, right? They think that they have the hypothesis that's the end-all, be-all hypotheses, and then they skew stuff to make themselves look right. Don't do that, okay? Integrity. Keep your promises and agreements. If you are working for a company one day, if you are working for the university, make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's in terms of doing the things that you said you're going to do. Make sure you're acting with sincerity, strive for consistency and thought and action. Okay? Carefulness. Oh my gosh, how simple, right? But avoid carelessness to avoid those errors and negligence. Carefully examine your work. Don't just kind of try and... There are going to be some people in your fields who are going to try and crank out research left and right, bless you. And they're going to try and just get as many publications as they can. And there's some in my field that do that. I've met people that I got my master's and then they went on to get their PhDs. They did that. They have like 60 publications already, which is unheard of, and they're like my age. So make sure you're acting ethically, make sure you're careful with your research, that way you don't get caught and, like I said, ruin your reputation down the road. Keep good records of your research activities, such as data collection, research design, and correspondence with agencies and journals. Okay. Openness. Make sure you're sharing your data results, ideas, your tools, your resources. Don't be that person that kind of hogs the research in your field, especially those of you who are going to be professors one day. Make sure you're being that good person. Do unto others as you would do, right? I forget how that actually goes. But be open. Be sharing your stuff. You're trying to provide something for the world, right? To try and get more benefits to the world. And some people who are in your field are going to try and keep everything under lock and key because they think they have the best stuff. So don't be that person. And openness also describes you. Be open to criticism and feedback. Because some of you in here have done research, but you've done undergraduate research. Graduate research is kind of a different ballgame. Okay? So make sure you're open to feedback and new ideas from your professors and faculty. Respect for intellectual property. Make sure you're taking a look at patents, copyrights, different things like that. Don't use unpublished data. That's a big one that some colleagues of mine have done, where they've seen, they're like, oh, this study's great, this works perfectly for what I'm trying to study, but it's not published. Don't do that. And then make sure you're getting permission for all of your stuff. Give proper acknowledgement or credit for all contributions. So some of you might be the first person on your research study. How many of you know what I'm talking about in terms of first author, second author, third author, things like that? Okay. So whenever you do a research study, the person who does the most work is going to be the first author. And then so on and so forth. So if you get to be, yes ma'am.
I just want to say, if you are doing research with faculty members, sometimes they'll let you know up front, no matter how the work distribution is, they will always be first author. So even if you do a lot of work, I just want to let you know, don't be surprised or saddened if they say, my name is always first author.
So if you are like the 8th author, that means you kind of didn't do very much. You kind of got your name on a publication. People know that, so I think kind of after the 4th author, your kind of respect starts to go down a little bit. Now there might be a longitudinal study that took place over like 10 years, so there might be like 10 authors because it took place over 10 years. 10 different people tried helping with research, and that's fine. But if you're doing a simple kind of baseline study and you're the 8th author, then it doesn't really great. Okay. So if you're first, second, third, fourth, you're looking pretty good. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm kind of flying through stuff, but I'm just trying to get you the basics before we move on to the meat and stuff this afternoon. Cool. Confidentiality, that's a big one. That's yeah, maybe I'll look at it. Protect confidential communications, papers, grants submitted for publication, personal records, especially those of you in here who are in communication psychology and different things like that, who are doing research with human subjects. Make sure you're keeping everything under lock and key. Don't let their personal information get out. You get in very big trouble for that. Trade military secrets, patient records. Some of you in here doing health stuff. So just make sure you're being very careful with personal information. That's demographic info, that's financial info. I don't know. Do you think anything else? What else would people not like to get out?
All your ideas.
Right.
You don't want to go bragging about your idea because someone's going to take it.
Yep. Especially if someone's really good at research and really good and established, who can go through the IRB process very quickly, who has friends on campus, they're going, hey, I got this sweet idea, let's keep rolling, and then they publish it in like 6 months before you do. Okay. What else? What about sexuality? Right? You get in very big trouble if you ask for someone's sexuality, which happens in studies, and then you let that information out, right? Legality, all that fun stuff, right? And that's just straightforward. It's make sure you obey the laws of your institution and government. I mean, make sure you're checking into that stuff, especially if you are doing human subject research. If you're trying to look into patents and different things, look at that. So make sure you're checking into your work a little bit, okay? Oh my goodness, how many people are in here thinking about doing research with animals or have done that? No? Yeah? I'm doing human subjects, they are animals. So, a professor of mine who I did research with in undergrad, Dr. Jeremy Turner, he works with mice, and he would, still not sure how it all worked out, but he would kind of study mice brains and give them concussions because we wouldn't be doing that with human subjects, right? So he's been doing it for probably 30 years. He knows people. He's been doing it forever. He's ethical. Still, and I'm unsure how the process works with the animal stuff, but just if you're working with animals, make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, okay? It's pretty interesting, honestly. If you're into that kind of thing. Let's see. Yes.
So you meant like make sure not to harm animals?
Right. Make sure you're acting ethically. I keep talking about human subjects, but you need to do the same thing with animals. Otherwise, you're going to have like a veto on your And last but not least, the big one that I've been talking about. Make sure you're minimizing the harms and risks and maximizing the benefits with your human subjects. Make sure you're respecting human dignity. Don't make them do things that they don't want to do or that you wouldn't want to do. Privacy, autonomy. Take precautions, especially with vulnerable populations, such as if you're doing research with individuals with Down syndrome and things like that. Okay? And strive to distribute the benefits and burdens of the research fairly. Any questions so far? Good. Okay. Got a few principles and guiding principles that I kind of want to leave you with. Then. Make sure you're minimizing the risk of harm of everyone involved. Like I said, physics and chemistry groups, I don't know how much human interaction you're going to deal with. So, that's what I figured. But other people in here do it. Even, and I say human subjects, and I even mean like if you're going to do like a survey, okay? Make sure you obtain informed consent from your individuals participating in your study. That's a big one. If you don't have informed consent, you're not going to do it. Protect the anonymity and confidentiality of your subjects. And really of anyone involved with the research process. Okay. Avoid deceptive practices like I was talking about. Provide the right to withdraw from your studies. If someone says they want to take your survey, you send them a survey and they say, you know, I don't want to do this anymore, and you go tough, no, don't do that. They got to be able to withdraw from your study. So, for example, the research I did in undergrad, I focused a lot on concussions because way back in the day when concussions were first starting to become a problem, back in like 2010-ish, we strapped concussion sensors on the backs of the football team's helmets and measured the G-force data and things like that. But there were some players who were like, "No, I don't want that on me. I don't," because they were afraid that if they got a concussion and we registered the G-force data, that their coach was going to pull them out and they weren't going to be able to play. So we had a lot of players who were like, "No, I'm not even going to participate." So you just have to roll with it sometimes. Okay. Any questions about ethics? No? Good. Great. Okay. I got some examples though, because something else you got to learn about me is I love history. I thought you wanted me. Huh. All right. Take a look at these. It's just. Merry Christmas. These are some of the most unethical studies ever done known to man. I'm a big history person. I love learning about this kind of stuff. It's fascinating. So take a couple minutes and kind of read through these. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. If you want it. I mean, I know you're busy. Take a look at some of those. Any of the headlines jump out at you? Read it a little bit. I also like to talk about this just because if you don't know the history of research and different things that have gone on, it's kind of doomed to repeat itself eventually, right? What's that? Oh, thank you, sir. You want to read number one? Okay. So, for instance, number 28, Henrietta Lacks. She was an uneducated woman from Baltimore back in the 50s, and she didn't know she was participating in these studies. And they took information from her and really, honestly, helped advance the field of medicine like tremendously. But do you think she ever saw a dime for that?
Did they take the cells after she died?
No, it was pretty,
Sure.
pretty darn sure.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Double check. False. False news. So
Right, you're right. It was while she was. It was throughout her life.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, it was throughout her life.
But she and her family never saw a dime of all of that stuff, and she'd probably be a millionaire, honestly, because she alone helped advance medical stuff like a lot. Let's see. How many of you have heard of Sigmund Freud? He's like the big one that we always love to talk about as being unethical because he would give his patients cocaine and different things like that, right? Try and kill him pretty much. Well, Emma Eckstein was one of his subjects, and he did some terrible, terrible things with her. And he studied her for 3 years for science. I don't think so. Right? Electroshock therapy on children. Oh my, some of these stuff. Number 18, I like this one just because I'm from around the University of Iowa. Conducted a stuttering experiment. Who are my speech pathologists? Yeah, that's right. Stuttering experiment on 22 orphan children. They were separated into 2 groups. And essentially, it's not funny, it's just, I can't believe this stuff actually went on without anyone stopping it. The first group received positive speech therapy where the children were praised for speaking fluently, speaking well. And the second group, the children who stuttered, were belittled and made fun of for their speech imperfections. So essentially you can kind of see how that is unethical, right? Experiments on newborns, medical experiments on prison inmates. How many of you have heard of the Stanford prison experiment?
We got that in class. It was crazy.
Isn't it great? What do you got? Can you tell me about it?
So basically, they took a bunch of like boy or like college age students from like obviously Stanford, so like a really prestigious school, and they set them up and they put some as like prison guards and some as prisoners, basically to say like their hypothesis was that all people are equal, and it worked because they were like really crazy. And, like the parents would come, and basically the scientists or whoever was conducting the experiment, they wanted to like pull them out. Basically, you'd be like, don't you want your man to be here? Don't you want your son to be tough and stuff? So they would like leave them in there, and it was just crazy.
Yep. So the inmates started acting like victims, and the prison guards really had the power to go to their head and started treating the inmates like crazy, right? So that was back in the 70s, and I think it was supposed to be a month-long study, and they only lasted about a week.
Yeah.
Because it started to get pretty terrifying, right? Of course, we have the Nazi experimentation. That's like kind of the big one everyone always likes to talk about. Number 1, though, look at number 1. This is kind of a new one for me. I was actually really shocked when I read this one. I didn't even realize this happened. The mustard gas experiments on our own sailors during World War II. They basically took a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old boys out of once they graduated from boot camp back in the 40s. And they asked if they wanted to participate in the experiment, and they said, you know, kind of like Captain America, hey, it's going to help shorten the war. And they're like, all right, sweet, I'm going to be a hero. So which really messed them up. Physically, internally, they had awful lives after that, right? So keep these, take a look at them, read them whenever you want to be scared before bed. But don't do any of these kind of things, right? But I like to learn the history of research a little bit, and kind of what's been done, what shouldn't be done, and things like that. Anybody got anything? No? Good. Good. All right. Really quick, for those of you that are doing IRB or might do IRB stuff in the future, on scientists, pull up. If you go to Oklahoma State Human Subjects Research website, you can pull it up on your computer if you'd like. You can go to IRB. This is the IRB website, okay? So if you want to look at all these different things here, but if we're going to look at it right here, applying to the IRB, and it has different steps for you on how to actually apply for human subjects research. So if you go to step 1, it's going to give you a flow chart. Start here. Is it research? Yes, no, and then it kind of tells you whether or not you even need to apply for the IRB, okay? What does IRB stand for? Yes, ma'am. So it's the Institutional Review Board. Every campus has one, and it's just a committee who basically looks at your methodology. Like, is it ethical? Are these human subjects going to be treated ethically or not? And it's because of experiments like those that we even have an IRB. But every campus will have one. Okay? Any questions about that? No? Good. Okay. Yeah, so basically the IRB is basically looking out for the people in your study. And you. They're trying to keep you out of prison. Cool. Yeah, go ahead. There we go. Your favorite topic of the day, we're going to be talking about plagiarism a little bit. It refers to the practice of claiming credit for the work, ideas, and concepts of others. And whether paraphrasing, quoting directly, or describing an idea that influenced your work, you must credit that source. How many of you have done research papers in here? You all feel pretty comfortable? Thank you, Micah. You all feel pretty comfortable doing a literature review down the road? We're going to talk about literature reviews later this afternoon. Okay. It's just very easy. The golden rule. It's not yours, cite it. Okay. You didn't even go back. Good. Good. Okay. You got verbatim. This is basically, you can't just change a couple words, right? I've seen people do that where they'll take a sentence and they'll change and and the around and think it's good to go. It's actually plagiarism. You will get caught. Cutting and pasting from the internet. How many have done this? Wikipedia? Anybody? No? You know, you laugh. Okay. I like this. This is why I like working at an R1 institution. How many of you know what an R1 institution is? No? So it's different tiers of research schools throughout the country. So like I went to West Virginia, OSU, they're all R1 institutions, which is a Research 1 institution, which means you are the best of the best in the country in terms of research quality, which is why you all have different research courses. This is why a lot of you participate in research on campus. This isn't afforded on other campuses. You have an R2, R3 campuses across the country as well. So for you, when you get done with your mayor, I'm going to heavily push you to go to a different R1 institution, right? Because you're already doing quality stuff here, you might as well keep that going. Okay? Paraphrasing. This is another changing the words around. Collusion. Who can tell me what collusion is? Nobody? Jeremy, what you got? Anything?
The process of
Thank you. Well done like a scientist. All right. So collusion, I actually did this one. Believe it or not. I know. I'm the super here. I'm the super guy, but I didn't realize what it was because no one had told me. So we got a research project, and my buddy Ron and I at West Virginia, we worked on the project together, and we didn't realize we weren't allowed to work on the research project together. We used different sources, we used different methodology, but our stuff ended up very similar. And we got called in front of the review board, and we had to plead our case pretty much. They let us continue the program, thank goodness, but it scared the heck out of me. It really did, because I was like 6 months into my master's. I was like, I don't want to quit. And I'm like, no one else is going to let me in if they're like, nope, you got kicked out for plagiarism, right? Good. That's the good stuff. So, watch out for collusion. If you're doing group participation and different things like that, make sure you're doing your own work. Okay? Even if you work with someone, make sure you kind of compare and be like, is this different enough? Which we did. We were like, oh, yeah, that's mine, that's yours, we're good. Not good enough. Inaccuracy. This is going to fly whenever you start doing publications and things like that. It's fine whenever you cite things in undergrad and you're just doing it for class, but whenever you're looking for publication, they're going to go over each one of your sources, they're going to look up your sources, and they're going to check your work. Okay? So you cannot be inaccurate. How many of you use APA here? Okay. So, there you go. Filters. Sorry, I know you're the one person that might hear it. These are just sources. You want them? So this is a sample list of APA sources. You need to talk with whoever your faculty mentor is to double check your work. But this is what a reference list is going to look like whenever you start doing and completing them. Hopefully you don't find any mistakes in there because this is the reference list from my master's. So hopefully there's nothing real bad in there. But if you look, you're going to need the title, you're going to need the name, you're going to need the year it was done, the journal. You're going to need all of these things whenever you're doing a publication, okay? And it's got to be right. So there's going to be no more easy bib. What do you guys use? Style Wizard. Yeah. Those will still sometimes with the spacing or a comma or different things like that, those could be wrong. So make sure if you do use that, make sure you're still going over your work, okay? Any questions about these? Anybody find any mistakes? This is APA style. Yes.
Do you want us to include the DOI? Because some professors don't want us to include that.
If you have a DOI, you must cite it. If you look at my very first one, there was no DOI. DOI, yes. DOI. So the DOI is just where you can find it online. If you look at, down to Druckmann, 2001, I have the DOI right there. So I'm not going to require all of you to be APA masters or whatever you use, MLA, Chicago, different things like that. But this is where you need to really work with your faculty mentor to double check your work. Okay, because hopefully we are pushing all of these research studies you're going to be doing. We're going to be pushing that for publication. So it needs to be correct now that we don't have to make a bunch of do-overs down the road. Okay. Any questions about citation? I mentioned this earlier, but make sure you're giving your acknowledged assistance. And this is when you're big time. All my doctors in here down the road who are going to be professors. professors and you have student workers that help on your study, give them some credit, okay? Help them out a little bit. Or if you have someone from another institution like OU kind of look over your work a little bit, you need to give them credit. Okay? Because you would expect the same from them, right? If you put work into something, you want to get credit for it. Okay? Golden rule, there it is. It's not your thought, cite it. Any more questions? Good? All right. We're going to do one more thing and then we'll take a break, okay? Annotated bib. This is what all of you are going to be doing for your first milestone. Your first milestone is going to be coming up with your research question and then doing your annotated bibliography, okay? Shouldn't take you too long. They only need to be about 150 to 200 words, each one. And I'm going to pass out examples here in a little bit. And this is what it's doing. It's going to inform the reader of why you cited it. Why is it important for the current study that you're doing? Why are you using it in your paper? And I know some people are like, annotated bibliographies are a waste of time. Whenever you're doing a PhD dissertation and you have 100 citations and 100 different articles, you're going to want that annotated bibliography because you're going to be like, what is this article again? Why do I need this? It's a mess. Okay? So there's two different kinds. You can just do summary. Who wrote it, what it discusses, when and where it was written, why it was produced, how was it provided to the public. And description is key for these. These are going to be the shorter versions, okay? Bless you.
Thank you.
And then the second version. Value of 2. It's the same as above, but it also adds a little extra to it. It also critically assesses for accuracy, relevance, and quality. And it helps to decide if your source is useful. Is there enough there for it to be useful for your project? Okay? So if you take a look at the first one, that's the summary. You're going to cite it at the top, just like you would in APA, like in my paper, but you're going to indent the bottom. Then the second one is the exact same thing, but it's the longer version, and that's the one you should do. I'm not going to force you to do this one for your research project, but as you get older, as you start doing significant research, this is the type that you're going to want to do. So if you want to start getting to the habit now, you might as well go for it. Just use that example. It should be pretty straightforward. Just summarize your article. Just do it to where it makes sense to you. You don't need to fluff it to where you're like using all this scientific jargon, right? Just make it simple for you. Okay. So let's go over the process a little bit. Like I said, you're going to cite it first. Which should be easy. So you should be, as you get your research articles, so this is what helped me during grad school. Get your research articles done, have all your research, get your reference list done first, and then create another copy, and then start working on each of your annotated bibs. That way you have your annotated bib done and your reference list done at the same time. Does that make sense? Make it simple for you. Describe the main ideas, arguments, themes, theses, and methods. and especially be thinking about down the road for your literature review, why is this going to, because when you write a literature review, Dr. Cole is going to really talk about this. It's not just a summary of the research. That's what you're doing here. A literature review is different because you're building an argument. You're building an argument of why your study should take place. Because if you're just doing a study for the heck of it, people are going to be like, why? Why do we need this? And that is what your literature review is all about. Does that make sense? And that's what I struggled with during my master's. They would tear apart my literature review and be like, no, no, no. And they would just keep saying, build your argument, build your argument. And that was the hardest thing for me to do, was to get a good literature review and build my case for why my study should be done. Okay? So keep that in mind. While you're building your research, you're building your sources, how is this going to help your argument for your study? Okay. Make sure you check out the author's point of view or any biases they may have, because there might be some. And make sure you point those out. Then you're going to want to compare this with other sources on the same topic, differences, similarities. So if you have, let's just say you're doing concussions. And if you have two topics on the effects of the long-term effects of concussions, make sure you say, this article is different because this article is different from this article, or this article is similar because, so it builds even a better case for your argument, right? So multiple people have found out this. That's a really strong argument for your paper. Questions so far? Good. Why is it useful for your research topic? I'm discussing that. Then you're also going to look at the strengths and weaknesses. So it might be useful for your research topic, but it also might be a crappy article. But you might not be looking at their methods, you might not be looking at their conclusions, you might be citing something that they cite. You might be citing something in their literature review, is what I'm saying. And hopefully you're finding a lot of strengths. And some pro tips. Make sure you indent 2 spaces, as you can see on the examples. Make sure it's double spaced. And make sure you're using third person, he, she, the author. Cool. Any questions about the process? Any questions about your annotated bibliography? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When we're doing our research for this, can we come back and ask you to look at this PowerPoint? Okay.
Not a problem. I can send the slides to you if y'all want. Okay, you got it. If I'm going too fast, let me know. You guys are a smart bunch, so I'm just kind of flying through this. But like I said, don't spend a whole lot of time on the annotated bib. It's 150 to 200 words. Summarize your article. If you want to, go a little bit further in depth, and then get it done. Okay. This will also help you determine if your research question is really valuable or not. Because if you find only like 5 sources on it that will help build your argument, you might want to go back and start looking at a different research question, right? Maybe tweaking it a little bit. That's something we're going to want to talk about with effectiveness a little bit. Okay? But if you find about 100 articles on something, maybe you might need to focus your research question a little more. I'm not putting a limit on this because the more you write, the better your argument's going to be. I would say for your literature review, I'll ask Dr. Keefe as well, but if your literature review, 20 to 30 pages or so. Not an annotated bit. So she's wanting to do public policy and things like that, but if there's not a professor who is willing to work with her or who doesn't do that on campus, that's fine. All you need to do is get a study. Get a study done, do a publication. That's all that matters to these grad schools, is that you have the capacity to do research, you are a focused student. So, for instance, my undergrad research was on concussions. I did a lot of psychology stuff, I did a lot of neuroscience stuff, and then I got my master's in communication. So, it's okay. But it looked great on my graduate application that I was involved in research. That's all that matters. Okay, so if you're worried about doing something that's kind of outside your wheelhouse, like let's say you don't get into anything in like hydrology crisis, but you do something in environmental science. That's all that matters for right now. Because when you get your master's or your PhD or whatever you go get, that is when you can focus and do what you want to do. So I'm sure that all of you who have done research before, you're like, I cannot wait to go to grad school and focus on what you want to do, right? Any questions about that? All that matters is that research. And it doesn't really matter, I've spoken to a couple of you about this too, it doesn't really matter what you get your undergrad in either. I'm not saying you're an accounting major and then want to go get your PhD in chemistry. That's not going to work. But like me, I did psychology, but then I went on communication. I knew someone that did biology, but then ended up doing history. It just, if you can make your argument to those grad panels or the admissions for graduate school of why you deserve to be in their program, you're in. Okay? So don't feel like you're so hampered down. You're like, I did this in undergrad, so therefore I must do this in grad school. You can do whatever the heck you want. Does that make sense? Okay. Keep your options open. Alright, something that my grad professor taught me that, and I was a first gen student. No one taught me about grad school. No one told me about research really. I just kind of did it with my professor on my own. He was like, do a method. And I'm like, okay. And I ended up having to figure it out on my own what went into methods, right? So, but something my master's professor, the very first thing I did, I sat down in my master's class. We went through what's called the Hell Week, where it's, we were in there starting about 9 a.m. and we didn't get done until about 6 p.m. For a week straight. And we just did this similar stuff all day, every day. But the very first thing I did, I sat down and he did this. What does that mean?
That is EP is that's more like that. Are you talking about the Latin or what the English translation?
English translation.
More or less that is clarification.
It's essentially in other words. Okay. So this is in other words. If you see this in a paper, that's what that means. Okay? And really, if you think about it, I haven't really had to think about that before. He wrote that down and I was like, I just kind of read it. I kind of skipped it when I read stuff. I think you had another, for example. Who can tell me what an ampersand is? Yes. Who wants to come draw it? Who wants to pull one up on the computer? I can do that. How about that? You want to draw it? Come draw it. And I want to pull it up on the computer and carry one. Very nice. Thank you. There you go. That word is an ampersand. And now you know. Fun fact for the day. And it is a symbol for and. He wrote those three things on the board, and pretty much the entire master's class were like, I don't know. Right? But now you know. In other words, For example, and. Okay? You're going to start reading all these journals and stuff, and you're going to be like me and skipping over stuff. I knew what an ampersand was, but the other two I was like, just kind of guessed. Okay. All right. Any questions? Here we go. Parts of a research paper. You start with a title. Yep. Okay. I'm going to need those here in a little bit. Your title, and this is down the road whenever you actually complete your study. This is not something you're going to need for our program for right now. But the title should be specific and indicate the problem the research project addresses using keywords that are going to be helpful in literature use in the future. So if you're talking, let's say I did a study on concussions, and it was the, oh geez, I can't remember the title, it was so long, it was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I should have been like concussions in sports. But it was concussions and commentary and the effects that it has on the general public or something crazy like that. Just keep it general, keep it specific, and it indicates the problem. That way you can cite it later, okay? Your abstract, that's going to be at the bottom of your paper, the title page. That's basically going to be about 200 words, which is a challenge for some people who are egotistical and they like to write about themselves. They're like, I did this, and it's amazing. Like, nah, keep that short, okay? That's the summary you see, and that's what you need to start being very good at reading and reviewing. You're looking up all these sources. If you're looking up 30 sources, you need to be able to skim that abstract and be like, is this relevant to me? No. Is this relevant to me? Yes. And have that yes in the pile, ready to go, okay? You're going to have your intro. This is the broad overall topic, providing some basic background information, and then it slowly narrows down to specific research questions relating to the topic. So you're going to be like, concussions are this. This is what a concussion is. This is what's going on in America right now with concussions. Football players are getting hit all the time. It's terrible. These are the lasting effects. This is what I want to study because of that. Very narrow it down, okay? That's going to be your intro. Then what Dr. Keith Cole is going to be talking about this afternoon is your lit review. And the purpose is to describe past important research and how it relates specifically to your research problem, synthesis of the literature that's done, all relevant findings. Speaking of which, what's a good rule of thumb in terms of finding sources? What year should they be? What's that? Yes.
What's that been past 2000? Past 2010?
Better, you're getting closer. So a good source is going to be something in the last 5 years. 5 to 10, okay? If you're doing stuff from like 1970, I'm going to look at that source and I'm going to be like, nah. I guarantee you something's changed in the last 40 years. I wasn't even born 40 years ago, right? You're not telling me there's something that's changed, something more recent that's happened. Especially people doing medical stuff and they cite something from like 1999. I'm like, what? Get out of here. So make sure your stuff is current. And make sure you're looking at peer-reviewed stuff. Don't be citing, okay, stupid example, but Wikipedia. Don't be citing your friends. Don't be citing like second-hand knowledge. What's that?
An article.
Exactly. Don't cite that stuff in a journal, a research publication. You're going to want stuff that's peer-reviewed, journal articles, credible sources. Okay. Then the big hot tamale, the methods section. Within your methods section, you're going to have participants. you're going to, we're going to talk about random selection later, but you're going to want to put if your participants were randomly selected or not, or if they were targeted. So, and then you'll put in there, for example, we randomly selected 100 children from elementary schools near the University of Oklahoma. Random. It's gonna say who was in your study, the population from which they were drawn. So I did a stupid study. I say it's stupid because it kind of was. But I did a qualitative study, and who can tell me the difference between quantitative and qualitative?
Qualitative is like
Because
quantitative is like when you just more like colors and stuff like that. Quantitative is like the numbers in front of you.
right. So qualitative, you're looking at more words, surveys, and different things like that. So you comm majors, you psych majors, you might be doing a few qualitative studies. I did quantitative and qualitative. I did quantitative in grad school. But my qualitative study, I looked at, we were talking about this yesterday, I looked at tattoos. And what I found, my population was the college campus I was on, but I randomly selected students to participate in my study. And I would show them pictures on a slideshow, and it was pictures of people with all black tattoos and pictures of people who had colorful tattoos. And what I found was the people with black tattoos were viewed more negatively than people with colorful tattoos, which was interesting. It was I say stupid study because you can't really generalize it to the entire United States because it was a small college campus in the middle of the Midwest, right? But you could continue that research down the road at a large institution or send a study across the United States, and then it could mean something. But that's what I found is that people thought people with just plain black tattoos were viewed more as rough, mean, unapproachable, and that sort of thing. So, identify who your participants are. Next is going to be materials and methods. Materials. That's going to be describing your measures, your equipment, your stimuli used in the experiment. So for me in my concussion study, my materials were the concussion sensors, right? And then I even had to say I used duct tape to tape the concussion sensors to the backs of their helmets. So I had to you have to be as specific as possible during these method sections. Okay? Specific as possible. And I did a small study in a class one time, and my professor got on me. He said, "What's up with this method section?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" Because I was stupid and cocky and like 20. And I was like, "What are you talking about? That's as specific as I can be." And he said, "What does that say?" And I said, "Participants are going to use pencils to fill out the survey." He said, "What kind of pencil are they using?" Number 2. I had to put that. I did. You got to be as specific as possible. Okay? So for my concussion sensor, I can't just put, we use concussion sensors. I had to put, we use the TX90, blah, 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 blah. And then I used duct tape that was like Gorilla duct tape. Okay? Next is design in your method section. It's going to be your design. Yes. Sorry.
You have to be super specific so like someone else can repeat it, right?
Yes. Because if some stupid reason, just I don't agree with this logic or whatever, but if they don't use number 2 pencils and you did, they can go back and say like, well, there you go. Let's use your results right there. It's true. Okay. Be as specific as you possibly can. Think through all of the little details. Okay. So your design is kind of a little bit advanced for you right now. This is going to be something you want to talk to your faculty mentors about what type of design works best for your study. Are you going to do a 3x2 design? Or are you going to do a simple t-test? Like what kind of things are you going to do? I'm not even going to get into that right now. That's going to be down the road when you're talking with your faculty mentors. Okay? You're also going to want to clearly identify your independent and dependent variables, your control variables, your extraneous variables. We're going to go over that stuff here in a little bit, okay? So, for example, the experiment used a 3x2 between subjects design. The independent variables were age and understanding of second-order beliefs. Okay, it all sounds confusing. I promise once we go over stuff and you start diving into research a little bit, it's going to make more sense. And if you have questions, email me, call me, but then ask each other too. Especially you peeps who have done research before, help some people out in here, okay? Share the wealth a little bit. And then last but not least is going to be your procedure.
Was this thing popped up on the screen?
No, I was just reading. Sorry. And the last is procedure. So this is going to be what you had the participants do, how you collected the data, and the steps that occurred. So during my concussion study with the sensors, this is where I had to clearly identify, we randomly selected these participants for this. I went early on August whatever and take the concussion sensors to the helmets. The next day we did baseline tests where, and all that fun stuff. So that's where you're going to say what actually, or what you're actually doing. Okay. All right, that's it for the methods section. But some things to remember when you're writing that, make sure you're writing it in the past tense, like it already happened. Okay. Fun little tip. Any questions about the methods? That's kind of an important part, and that's going to be one of your milestones this summer is to get your methods section. But your methods section really isn't going to be that one. It should be. That's going to be your reward after your literature. That's your reward for getting your literature. Okay? The results. Another part of your paper. That's where your analysis. This is, so everything that we just covered, all the way to methods, right? That is what you're going to be doing this summer. The main ones are going to be the literature review and the methods. That's what I really want from you this summer, okay? We can work on your title, abstract, and intro down the road after you start getting published, okay? So this is all that you're going to do this summer. Now, after you conduct your study, this is when we start doing this stuff, okay? And this is just the analysis of the data, graphs, tables, different things like that is going to be in there. And then your discussion and conclusion. And then you're going to discuss the results and the implication in your field as well as other fields. And that's really important. So how did this advance the field you're in? How did my concussion study advance the field? Well, we found out with the concussion study that it was kind of a side thing we found out, but players who had what coaches were worried about, and this is kind of it was kind of a two-pronged study. We did it for the G-force data as well as to see the behavioral data of how players would react when they had a concussion sensor on them. So what our hypothesis was, players who had a concussion sensor on their helmet would turn into pansies pretty much. They wouldn't want to hit. They're like, heck no, I'm not going to do that. If they're like, nope, I'm not getting a concussion. But what we found out was players didn't really care, and as a matter of fact, they probably played harder if they had a concussion sensor. They wanted to be able to prove that they were okay. So it was an interesting. So what we found out was, and then we ended up sending that away to these different concussion sensor companies. We're like, hey, start mass producing these things because players are going to keep playing whether they have a concussion sensor on or not. So, and now you see all these concussion sensors on high school football players. Colleges, and they're kind of slow to the game a little bit, but high schools all across the country are now using concussion sensors. So the implications of your study, that's what you're going to talk about there. And then last but not least is your references section. And that's what I passed out to you earlier. So you can take a look at all the different sections that go into a research paper. You're going to do like a 20 to 30 page literature review, and when you get older, you're going to do like a 100 page something or other. And then the hard part about publishing is squeezing it into this little tiny section here. That is a hard thing to do, especially if you're very egotistical. I'm telling you. And whenever you get to be a professor and you start working in academia, you're going to realize professors are some pretty egotistical people. They think they know everything. They think their research is the best compared to Joe Schmo over there, right? But, and I happen to know a very egotistical professor he's at Clemson now, Clemson University, works in communication. His focus is communication and sport. And that dude struggles getting published. He has amazing work, but he can't shorten his stuff. It is the darndest thing. I'm like, dude, just plop a couple things down and get published. He's like, no. They need to know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. So if you take a look at this, you can kind of look at their abstract there. You can look at their literature review, their methods, the measurements, the results, the discussion, and the references on the back. And this is what it's going to look like when you're all said and done and you're published. Okay? So take that, kind of look it over a little bit. Any questions about that?
What's the font and the size?
Good question. So I'm an APA guy, and I know not everyone in here is APA, so we need to look up and see what exactly works for your different style. But a general rule is to do Times New Roman 12-point font for everything. Any other questions? Yeah, like I said, they're still waiting on the brownies. Should be here in 10 minutes. All right, last thing we're going to cover here. I think these are some of the more important vocabulary you need to know whenever you're conducting research. Some of you might know these already, that's fine. What I want you to do is get on your computers and go through and define these, and we'll go around the room and discuss them, okay? I want each of you to identify one. Here in a little bit, okay?
Yeah, you just want to tell them my laptop, my computer's being ratchet.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, mine's doing the same thing.
That's fine. Alright, for the sake of time, we are not going to come together, but if you have questions about any of these words, fill them out. Feel free to email me or talk to me by the end of the day and I can help you out with that. But we are going to go ahead and break for lunch. We have lunch downstairs in 222, and we'll be down there until about 1 or so.